and I work for the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And I wish to welcome all of us to this webinar and appreciate you for creating time to join the webinar today. So the webinar today will mainly be having a conversation around the voter registration puzzle in Kenya. So the Kenya Human Rights Commission, in partnership with the Angaza movement, have hosted this webinar with a view to have political conversations and reflections around the puzzle in the voter registration in Kenya currently, looking at the causes and also looking at the impacts, and also trying to see how, and linking it to see how prepared the IBC is in managing the 2022 elections and beyond. So first and foremost, I wish to invite our panelists today. So in the panel, we'll be having Betty of, yes, I see you've managed to join back. Betty seems to be having connectivity challenges. Yes, she's back. So among our panelists today, we have Betty Okero. Betty Okero, the team leader for the CSO network, which is also a member of the Angaza movement. Welcome, Betty, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Furaha, and I'm very happy to be here. And I also want to extend a warm greeting to the members of the panelists today.
Thank you. And then we also have Annette Nerima. Annette is the CEO of Siasa Place. Welcome, Annette, and thank you so much for joining us. Sorry, Nerima wako.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry, I was wondering who you are speaking to.
Yeah.
My name is not Annette. But yes, my name is Nerima, and I'm the executive director of Siasa Place.
Yeah,
glad to be here.
Sorry for that confusion. It's because we also have another colleague called Annette.
I know, and I'm always happy to meet a fellow Nerima.
Yes. Yes, and also wish to welcome Dr. Richard Bosire. Dr. Richard Bosire is a lecturer, political science at University of Nairobi. Welcome, Dr. Bosire, and thank you so much for joining us. Kindly unmute.
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak on this very important topic today, and meeting with lost ones like Nerima we've met before.
Karibu sana, thank you. Yeah, I also wish to welcome Ruth Mumbi. Ruth Mumbi is one of our very vibrant HURINET members, that's the Human Rights Network members. Karibu sana, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Furaha. I'm also happy to be with all of you here. Asante sana, looking forward for a fruitful conversation.
Asante. And also we have William Owino. William Owino is also a member of our HURINET. Karibu sana, William, and thank you so much for joining us today. Please unmute, William. We can't hear you.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Are you hearing me? I'm happy to join you today in this discussion, and may I hope that we are going to have a very fruitful discussion that will champion or help us unearth all these issues that are affecting us in this community. I'm from SIAA, representing SIAA Community Support and Accountability Program, HURINET member.
Thank you. Thank you so much, William. Yeah, now before further ado, I wish to welcome our Executive Director, Mr. Davis Malombe, to do the opening remarks and the background setting. Davis Malombe, karibu. We are sharing a screen. The devices are a bit
challenge.
Yes.
So mine is to welcome all the team members in this conversation, which we are hosting as Kenya Human Rights Commission and Angaza. Angaza is a coalition. We are calling ourselves a movement of 18 organizations which are concerned about the political problems around elections in the country. And of course, Kenya Human Rights Commission, being a premier and governmental organization, is also very much involved in advancing the human rights agenda in electoral governance process, and we have been involved in this work for many years from 1992 when we were established. So I think a bit of context. So we are in this discussion because of what has been happening in the country around the youth, but precisely around the registration which has been taking place from October, of course, for the last 1 month, led by IBC. And as we know, IBC was targeting at least 6 million voters, mainly the youth. And in 2 weeks, instead of seeing like half of that figure registered, which is 3 million, we saw like 491,968, which is 16% of the target group. And so far, we haven't seen very good progress against the target. So which means by 15th of October, ideally we should have had like 3 million voters registered, but now we are so much below the target, which means most likely we may not achieve the set milestone. And of course, this, if you look at this against the by-elections which we have been experiencing in the country, like in Kiamba, we saw 45% voter turnout, which means there's a lot of disinterest by Kenyans, basically, in electoral and political processes. Basically, we are not calling this apathy. We just want to call it a political puzzle, which is the basis for today's discussion. It's part of what we want to unravel, and it is also part of what we have interest in terms of conversations. In fact, part of what we have been advancing as KHRC and also Angaza movement is just enabling people to be very much involved in the conversations around governance of the country. And of course, part of that is the elections, because elections are critical in setting up the political system of the society. So because of this problem, which is bigger in terms of non-involvement of the public in the governance of public affairs, and of course, in this context, also of the youth, we are asking ourselves very many fundamental questions, which we have no answer, and we have this diverse panel of scholars, practitioners, and also youth leaders, and also grassroots partners will be able to start giving us the answers and also recommendations in terms of policy and the political actions. So some of the questions we are also asking ourselves is it lack of support by the society? Because for you to be registered also as a voter, you also need to be registered as a person, because there's also that process of registration of persons we also take for granted. And of course, is it lack of interest in the governance of public affairs? Is it also apathy? Is it lack of trust? There's an article which was done this week, I think on Sunday, by Mugabe KI, the executive director of Article 19, who is also part of Angaza, entitled "Don't Blame the Youth." And he was arguing that when we tell the youth their vote counts, do we not know that their votes did not count in 2007, in 2013, and 2017? So is it because therefore their voices have not been counting, even when they are highly mobilized and involved in electoral and other governance processes? So that therefore raises a number of fundamental human rights and political governance questions. And in terms of human rights, Article 38 of the Constitution, sub-article, let me take just a minute. Article 38 of the Constitution, sub-article 3, when it talks about political rights, says that every adult citizen has the right without unreasonable restrictions to be registered as a voter, to vote by secret ballot in any elections or referendum, of course, among other provisions as part of fundamental rights and freedoms. Article 55, right, again, in the Bill of Rights is very clear. Article 55 is dedicated to the rights of the youth. And sub-article B says the state shall take measures, including affirmative action programs, to ensure that the youth, among other things, shall have opportunities to associate, be represented, and participate in political, social, economic, and other spheres of life. So this question of elections is part of the right to participate and also be represented in the political spheres of life. There's an international human rights framework called the UN Declaration on the Right to Development, which was passed in 1996. And it has a very fundamental description on what participation means. And it talks about active, free, active, and meaningful involvement in political, social, economic spheres of life, as put in Article 55, but also accruing benefits out of those processes. So all these problems we are therefore seeing is inimical to those fundamental rights and freedoms which are entrenched in the Constitution of Kenya and also the international human rights frameworks. And in terms of political governance questions, it is the questions we normally ask as human rights organizations which are involved in electoral governance. For example, in terms of, apart from what people normally call freeness and fairness, it's about legitimacy, credibility, and accountability of electoral processes and outcomes. Why are we raising this question? For example, when 6 million young people are not properly enlisted in the electoral process, can you therefore say that process and that outcome is going to be legitimate and credible? Because we also tend to focus on electoral justice from the point of voting, but we don't normally look backwards and start looking at the process in a more inclusive and also in a more comprehensive approach, because this process actually basically starts from the registration of persons, then to voters, and all those other processes which go up to the voting, dissemination, tallying, and declaration of results. So we are also asking these fundamental human rights and governance questions so that we can be able to get answers and be able to intervene within this puzzle we are all struggling with, which actually threatens the legitimacy and the credibility of the 2022 elections, and also violates the right of the youth as provided in a constitution. So with those few remarks, I just wish us a very insightful conversation, and hope out of this process we'll be able to engage more. And we are going to be having a lot of these topical and thematic discussions around elections as KHRC, as Angaza, and also as political or civic and human rights organizations. Asante sana.
Wow, thank you so much, Davis Malombe, for giving us a very comprehensive background and setting the agenda for the meeting today. And I wish to just to highlight some of the questions that will guide us during the conversation, around conversations on how have the youth been involved? Is it the issue of youth involvement? Is it a lack of trust? And also looking at civil and political rights, and how have they been adhered to? Because we understand the electoral it's a process. It starts all the way from registration all the way to the voting process. So how can we look at civil and political rights in the context of the whole electoral process, from voter registration, issues of ID, all the way to the ballot? So thank you so much for that, Davis Malombe, and we really appreciate that. So just to take us back, we were also hoping to have IBC on board, but for one reason or another, they've been unable to join us today for the meeting. But nevertheless, we'll proceed with the discussions. So I wish to welcome Nerima Wako, just to help us to demystify this voter registration puzzle. from your own perspective and experiences or reflections, what are the concerns of the youth? Why is it that we are seeing we as the target? I mean, the IBC so far has been able to register around 400,000 youth, and the target was around 3 million. Where's the missing link? What are some of the issues that are coming up from the engagements with the youth? Karibu sana Nerima.
Thank you so much. I will have to say once again, good morning, everyone. I agree with the article that Mugambi Kiai wrote on the aspect of a sense of trust that is lost. But that's not the only reason. There've been a lot of complaints, especially through some of the programs that we've been doing, where we were actually in Kericho, and this is also shared on our platforms at Siasa Place. We've been going and interviewing youth, especially first-time voters. All of them are below the age 21 and 18 to 21. So a number of them haven't registered because there's a little bit of misinformation. There's one young man who didn't register because he has dreadlocks. And so when he went to get his ID, he actually doesn't have an ID. He was told the only way he's going to get an ID is if he shaves his hair first. They're not going to take a picture on his national identification if he has that sort of hair. So he didn't go back. And there's also a lot of stories of people just not wanting to go through the process. There are people who actually don't have IDs and they're struggling to get their IDs, and there's been a lot of complaints there. But also the sense of what difference is it going to make? There is apathy, but there's also a survey that we did, just asking youth, what are your priorities right now? And for many of them, in fact, 66% of the respondents out of the 300 basically said it's the high cost of living. The high cost of living, it's just too high. Taxes are too high. Constantly trying to find ways to manage. That's what I'm concerned about now. It is November. We're talking about an election in August. So they don't understand the push to be talking about 2022 elections today when they are more concerned about, getting access to food today. So the issues that popped out the most, like I mentioned, the high taxes. Number 2 was actually unemployment. And then number 3, a lot of the youth are afraid of poverty. So you can see where they are. Mentally, there's a lot of exhaustion, especially when it comes to the economy. A lot of them are worried about their futures. They're not sure. They're not sure about their future, what's at stake. And they just think that there's too much focus on a political conversation, yet they should be much more focused going toward the economy and stabilizing it and access. And for them, especially coming from a period where we were locked in for 2 years, and as much as curfew has been lifted, it has not really made that much of a difference as people had thought it would. And, so a lot of them, even with their own biasharas, they're just trying to figure things out. So I also believe that a lot of youth toward the end are going to go and get their voters' cards, but it's going to be toward the end. I think I hear that they might be closing the continuous registration maybe around February. So I wouldn't be surprised if around January, they're going to be like a spike of youth who will go and try and register and get their voters card. Interestingly, Kenyan youth are as much as things are difficult and they're apathetic, they're still the most engaged in the region. I say this because even when you look at the kind of rallies that are being had or who attends these rallies, it's mainly youth. The conversations online, a lot of the conversations are political. The conversations on mainstream media are political. So it's in your face every day, all the time. And they're the ones engaging, they're continuing these conversations. They're not really locking themselves out of it completely. And so I think that it's just going to be last minute. We do a lot of things last minute. The way we even try and pay taxes, we do it last minute. A lot of times deadlines are extended because we're very last minute. So I'm not going to be surprised if a high number of young people come together last minute wanting to participate. So I think those are the comments that I'll make for now.
Wow, thank you for that, Nerima. I think you've really expounded on some of the issues that I think the youth and generally the overall population is going through, especially now with the economy just healing from impact of COVID that has affected the entire population, and also critical governance questions that have impacted the standards of living. For instance, issues around unemployment, issues around high living standards, and I think those are very crucial issues that you brought up. And also, I think you also shared with us the results from the survey that you did, just to get the perceptions of the youth around the involvement and also their interest in partaking in political processes. But one thing that you've also captured is their role in this, because you find most of the times whenever there are campaigns, there are political rallies, you find the youth, they play a big role in these campaigns. So thank you so much for starting off with that, and also for being brief, because actually I was looking at the time, and each panelist will have 10 minutes. So thank you so much also for keeping on time. Now I wish to welcome Betty Okero. Betty will take us through the different human rights questions around issues of what are the civil and political rights when it comes to issues of election, looking at the entire electoral process, because what is coming up is that there are cases of discrimination whereby some youth are not allowed to register because of appearance, and therefore we are seeing dwindling numbers in the voter registration process. So kindly take us through the human rights implication of this and other issues that are surrounding that. Welcome, Betty. Kindly unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Nerima, for setting us off. So I'm going to do a bit of everything because the conversation that we have really is just quite cross-cutting. But I want to start by saying that what we're witnessing is not voter apathy, as much as what we're seeing is political apathy, and that is important. Our politics have become so transactional in nature that young people who are not monolithic have also then decided to acquire the sort of the transactional nature that they now engage in with their politicians. I don't think it is that they don't care or they don't think it is important. I think they have recognized that it's politicians who do not care and also do not think that it is important. And that is why the outcome seems to be rigged against everything else that young people have come to believe. And so we have realized that institutions, so if you talk about rights and you talk about the IBC, if IBC recognizes that everybody has a right to vote, we shouldn't be talking about somebody being told about their hair, because that is not a requirement. We should not be dealing with the sort of apathy that we have, because we're also looking at people who are disillusioned because the system does not work, or disillusioned because they question the legitimacy of the outcome. They question the way they are being used, but they also question the way the system is being run. So IBC, who have a mandate to ensure that everybody is aware and knows their right or the importance of voting or registering or participating in elections, does the most minimal work when it comes to civic education. The idea that the reason why they do not do that is because they do not have money is one thing. However, we also recognize, and if I look at what Mugabe wrote the last time, that there were also creativity that was used. So there are two things about that creativity that is important that we also have to take note, that there's a way in which you can mobilize young people. But it also goes back to question the issue around how we must be able to throw in goodies for us to attract the sort of attention necessary for people to recognize that this is an important process that they must engage in. So the disillusionment that is setting is because a lot of people believe that the system is already rigged, and it is rigged against them. It is against their interests. The political parties that they work with keep changing their ideology so often that they constantly feel that they're betrayed. And that is why you can see the sort of disinterest in this whole process. So our institution, our leadership, our systems, our processes, the legitimacy of even the outcomes, those are things that people have lost faith in. Now, if you take into consideration that young people are not a monolith, but then you also recognize, and I like what Nerima said about them being extremely active and engaged. Yes, they are. They are the same people we see protesting on the streets. When it was IBC must go, they were there. And they were there for a reason. They were there because once more, they wanted to change the system that was rigged against their interest. When we start talking and when they listen to what politicians are talking about, the servers, people are cooking figures, there's the vifarangas, they're stealing right in front of us, they're stealing in the granary. All those things mean something to young people. And what they're actually hearing is that, hello, this thing is not about you voting. This thing is being decided upon elsewhere. So the question we're asking ourselves, after we have done that year and year again, why are we suddenly surprised that in 2021, the chickens have come home to roost? We're alarmed, politicians are frantic, and again, we're trying to fix the youth because we think the youth is the problem. The youth is not the problem. And as long as we continue to blame them for the fact that there is voter apathy, we continue to have the sort of problem that we have. We need to go back and ask ourselves, what is the issue? And the issue is really very simple. We must admit that over these years, mbele haiko sawa, and that is a reality. Or like what they say, kwa ground vitu ni difference. We see them walking around politicians when they go on their roadshows or when they're going into their campaigns, and they're all around them, but we don't see that translated into the number of registered voters, or we don't even see that happening into the voter turnout. So we must accept that young people are fatigued. They are tired of being conveyor belts for legitimizing processes that they actually do not even believe in those processes. They have discovered that they cannot influence. They've also recognized that they're not consulted. So we have all this political realignment and changes that happen. Young people are not involved, but we are then told at the end of the day, this is what we have decided, this is how it's going to be. And that's what I'm talking about, that they come in at the end purely to legitimize a process, not necessarily because they've been consulted or they have decided that this is how we want it to happen. No, it's not important. Now, when you don't consult a majority of the people, and not just young people, on the choice of leadership or even how processes are supposed to happen, you actually then instead get the sort of voter apathy or political apathy that we're seeing. When you're told that somebody's seat is safe, question is, why should I then go and register? But then we're also saying that we were going to register a new lot of young people who had just turned 18 or had turned 18 within the last 3 years, but we have not carried out any civic education. And so they are learning not from the institutions that should be able to provide that, but they are learning from people who have already given up. And the conversation that is going on at waste of time, don't do this. So even when you go on social media and you're looking at people talking about voter apathy or there's no registration, the issue you hear repeatedly is, for what purpose? What benefit is it of me? What is it going to do to change my life? If we start making elections about changing people's life, if we get young people to recognize that it is only by registering that their lives will be changed, then that will start making sense. But we also have got to go a step further and say, so how do we make sure that institutions are not rigged and that systems operate as they are supposed to? And it's not just about voting or registering to vote. It's about activism that starts pointing out and demanding for justice and accountability. It's about saying that I want to recognize my right to shelter, to food, to security, to health. And I can only do that if I get in the right person. However, for that to be possible, we must have systems that also work in our favor. And right now, systems are not working in young people's favors. It isn't at all. And we're just talking about young people, but it's generally everybody. The political apathy we are seeing and saying it is about young people is because we recognize that they have such a high population. But you can just translate that everywhere, even amongst my own peers. People are tired and people are fed up. And so when you start seeing that we are not even engaged, there's no alarm that people are not registering to vote. In fact, it was interesting that the people who were more concerned about the fact that people are not voting were civil society organizations who recognize the importance of why people have to vote, because that's how we change our system. The politicians' interests were like, we have a problem, I need to have the numbers. But then there are others also who are very comfortable that they do not want to have the numbers, because then numbers will also change the status quo for them and make it very difficult for them to get into positions of power. So moving forward, we have got to be able to retool this whole conversation and not just make it about the voter registration, but take this conversation back about transforming and changing lives, about linking my vote and my life, about linking my registration to be a voter and to participate in an election with a change that we want to be able to see in the country. About saying nobody should tell me who I'm going to vote for. And whatever vehicle that is there, I am going to decide who I'm going to vote for based on the person who is going to transform my life. And having said that, then it means we must be able to activate civic education in a way that we are able to transform the civic into political education and knowledge, and an awareness about how their civic duty translates into political change. If we are able to connect that and young people are able to recognize its importance, we don't need to become creative about people registering to vote. They will vote. And they won't just wait until we have got this period where everybody's talking about mass voter registration. It will become a daily duty and responsibility, because they recognize that their survival and their lives and the change and the rights and dignity is based on their engagement in a process where they decide who it is will sit on the table, including whether that table is going to be big enough for them. Right now, what we're seeing, we are all passengers. We're all actually observers. And we're looking into a vehicle through the glass. And then we have people inside the car telling us we are a problem outside when the door has been shut. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Betty. And I think my key takeaway from that is, how can we link voting to social, political, and economic transformation? Thank you so much for that, Betty. And now I wish to welcome Dr. Richard Bosire. And Dr. Richard kindly explain to us, with the current voter registration puzzle that we are witnessing currently, what is it? Why now? What are the political implications of the recent trend on voter registration on the 2022 elections and beyond? Kindly explain that to us from an academia point of view. Thank you and welcome.
Let me start by saying, actually, there's a huge echo. I can't hear anybody talking. I don't know. Is it from my side or is it from the system? I don't know. There is a huge echo.
Dr. Bosira, you've joined with 2 devices. You might want to just remove one device.
Sorry?
You have joined with 2 devices, maybe so you can just remove one of the devices. That is what is causing.
Actually, I did remove the other device. It was a phone. I actually did. I don't know. I even switched it off. Let me see if there's anything. Just a second.
I think perhaps you're both on YouTube and you're on Zoom.
Sorry?
I think perhaps you might be on YouTube and you may be on Zoom.
Okay.
So you've got a Zoom link on and you've got your YouTube on. So if you just switch off one.
It's still problematic. Maybe someone else can go before I do. Let me try to fix it.
Yeah, perhaps, and as Dr. Richard tries to fix that, maybe I would welcome Ruth Mumbi. Ruth, kindly give us perspectives from the grassroots experience with the youth. What is happening? What are the trends? What are some of the concerns that are coming up from experience and also from your interaction at the grassroots level? Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Praha. Yeah, this discussion is very timely. And mimi nitaongea on behalf ya vijana na watu wa mtaa. Na it is true, vijana wamekuwa wakioshwa. Wamekuwa wakitumika, they have been the ones who have been mobilizing, wamekuwa wakifanyia hawa wanasiasa kazi. But when it comes to the table, and especially I'm talking about the grassroots youth, when you're voters, without even talking about the mainstream youth, well, at least they have access to power because of the social background that they come from.
Ruth, can you please increase your volume? We are not able to hear you clearly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So nilikuwa nasema kwa mtaa vijana wamekuwa wakioshwa, and it is sad na at the moment vijana wamekataa kuchukua kura. One thing we've been seeing trends ambazo zimekuwa zikifanyika perpetrated by the government. You vote in a government ukitaka upate security, ukitaka upate access to health, ukitaka upate access to social amenities ambazo ziko. But kwa miaka mingi hizi zote vijana zimekuwa ni promises ambazo hazijakuwa fulfilled. We've also, and especially in Nairobi, umekuwa ukiona how livelihoods za vijana ambao ndio wanafanya kazi kwa jua kali venye zimekuwa zikikanyagwa na kubomolewa. Na sasa unarudi unaniambia mimi niende kupigia tena serikali kura to come 2022 iendelee kunikanyaga. We have also seen young people in the informal settlement hawana surety ya right to life. Right to life imekuwa ni privilege. And then this is the government that's supposed to protect your life. Now you go to vote ukijua ya kwamba you are voting in a government ili uweze kukuwa na environment ambayo utaishi na utakuwa secure. But the same government, instead of protecting you, it is the same government that inakuua. Aioni umuhimu wako baada ya kura. Na promises zimekuwa zikifanywa. Like 2013, 2017 tuliambiwa it was digital versus analog, ambapo vijana waliambiwa ile serikali inakuja, it's a digital government. And currently, majority of young people wanapata livelihood kutoka kwa mtandao. Tukaambiwa ya kwamba kutakuwa na stadiums ambazo zitajengwa. All these ukiangalia zilikuwa zibenefit talents za young people. Hizo zote hazikutendeka. Ni 10 years later. We were told that they were to provide young people with computers. Hiyo yote haikufanyika. So then unaniambia after 10 years nakuja kuniambia nipige kura ya kwamba kura yangu ndio itarekebisha mambo, ndio itanipatia access to this, itabadilisha mambo na niweze kuishi katika mazingira ambayo ni safe, ambayo nitakuwa na access to opportunities, na hizi opportunities zimekuwa zikipatiwa wale stooges wa wanasiasa. Then we have also noticed, na hii ni kitu imekuwa kwanza ikiendelea Mathare, whereby hizi seats ndogo ndogo, there is importation of leaders Mathare. So people feel hata tukipiga kura, see, this is not a person who will represent me, amekuwa imposed kwangu. So unaona mbona nichukue kura niende kupigia mtu ambaye sina connection na yeye, ameletwa, amekuwa imposed. So those are some of the things. And then I think also we as a society and even the politicians themselves tumekuwa tumeprofile vijana ya kwamba hawapigangi kura, and in fact ni msemo ambao wanasiasa wanasemanga sana. If you want to win an election, you bank on women votes. Vijana kura zao wanaambiwa ya kwamba kura zao wanachukua kura na wapigi. So I think that's pia wanataka ku send a statement. Tunashindanga mkitu profile ya kwamba hata tukichukua kura sisi wanga hatupigi mpaka tupatie handouts. Then why should I why should I register as a voter na ilhali mshasema ya kwamba hata nikichukua hiyo vote sitapiga mpaka ile wakati mtapatia handouts. Asante Furaha.
Thank you so much for that, Ruth. And that adds up to the questions around to the critical governance and the economic questions that the youth are, and also the legitimate concerns that are coming up from the youth and also from the experience at the grassroots levels at informal settlements. Thank you for that, Ruth. I'd wish to go back to Dr. Richard. I think he's experiencing connectivity problems. I see he's not, he's still trying to sort them. I think we can now go back. We can now welcome William. I've also noticed from the chat box, there are questions that are coming up. I will address this during the plenary session, and if we have more questions, right, kindly let's just note them down. At the plenary session, we'll have a question. We'll have an opportunity to ask all questions that we may have regarding the presentations that have been made up and any contributions to the presentation. So first, William, before you speak, I see Dr. Richard is back.
Yes.
Dr. Richard, are you able to speak now?
I think now it's clear.
Yes, we are able to hear you clear.
It's very clear now. Thank you. I didn't hear your questions well, but I can still speak on the issues. I want us to really look at critically what really causes voter apathy generally, and then we look clearly, specifically on the youth in our country. I've spoken to a number of people who tell me that actually there is no voter apathy among the youth. The thing is, in our social cultural systems, we still think 2022 is far away. So we are not in a hurry. We have other things that are urgent to be done until that moment when we feel it's close to elections to go and register. However, voter apathy is usually about lack of interest. Why should the youth register to vote? They register to vote because they believe that they will make a difference. There is interest in politics. They understand the politics. They know that politics is about sharing of resources. They know that when they elect government, government is going to distribute the national cake. And the youth being one of the largest sector of the population, they are going to benefit from that process. So the youth actually ideally should embrace they should have interest in politics, so to speak, because they have greater stake in the politics of this country, let alone being a larger sector of the population. But they are also for posterity. They have many years to live, and the mess that will happen today will affect them more. For me, that will ensure that the youth actually come out and reaches in large numbers and vote. Having said that, there is another issue, the lack of knowledge. With the social media and other types of media that we have today, can one say that the youth lack knowledge about voting or about elections? I think it should be the case, because the studies have been done, United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, and all that. There is a specialized knowledge one needs to receive that will make one politically active and wanting actually to fight for their rights. And elections is one of the ways to do that. That is why even in our constitution, IBC is required to do voter education, civic and voter education all the time on a continuous basis, so that our people have the knowledge about why it is important, why it should be a civic duty for each citizen to make a decision. Yet the Constitution recognizes us citizens as actually the sovereign. We are the ones who are the bosses. We should go ahead and elect people that we represent us in a representative democracy such as ours. So lack of that knowledge is really a major problem. The IBC has let us down. Our youth have been, not just the youth, in fact, it's across the population. 5 years is a long time. People need to be educated more often, rather than being educated at the last moment when elections are about to take place. Then there is another issue of disillusionment. We have politicians that we cannot trust. We have institutions that we cannot trust. When you look at all this, then you want to say the youth should have a lot of interest in politics. Disillusionment is a factor. The youth will not want to participate when they know that it's the same old guys, the same games are being played. Even if my vote, I vote, it doesn't make a difference. I have heard one of our colleagues there talking about what are the expectations. Jobs, we expect good education. We expect moving out of poverty. We expect better infrastructure, whether it is technological or it is, physical roads and other infrastructure. Those are the expectations. Have they been met? Barely. One can say barely so. So the youth have been disillusioned because of the same story, which has no correlation with the problems that they face in our society. That could explain the apathy. Also, many believe, again, I've said that, although I've said that, many believe that their vote will not count. We have this issue of money, and one of our colleagues has mentioned it. We have monetized elections so much that it's no longer about believing in democracy and participation in that democratic process that will make a difference. Because elections are about who is the highest bidder. Recently, IBC came up with some guidelines on campaign financing and campaign spending. It was thrown out by Parliament, and I don't know why IBC brought it too late in the day. These are some of the issues. These are some of the issues. If we have monetized our elections, why are we crying about apathy, voter apathy, when we believe that you can win elections as long as you have the money? Do you need public, or do you need civic education or voter education? You don't need it. And the youth have now been instrumentalized. We're using the youth as apprentice. We have something here for them to do. We don't think, or our politicians don't think, that our youth actually should participate in this process because they have a stake and because it's their right, and that they can either vie or actually vote for the right leaders in the community. We are using them. We are saying they have to behave like the adults. I mean, they should be adults. They should go out and vote. They should go and collect their, go and take their voters card. The story is just beyond that. The youth also have their own peer influences and their own ways of doing things. How do they get acculturated? How do they view elections? All those, what do they share among themselves regarding voting, regarding elections, regarding politics? What is that? Because their decisions, as one colleague mentioned, that they make a decision to vote for whoever they want. Some politicians say, take the money, but vote whoever you want. No, voting, the decision to vote, or for whom to vote, to who to vote for, is actually not made in a social vacuum. There's a social context to it. What does the family, what does the family believe in? The family influence, the social context includes the family, it includes the friends, peers. It includes what they get from social media, and all that is a whole context. What does the church, what does the religion, what does it have? What's our culture? All these things come into play to the extent that now finally when someone makes a decision, it's not made like an individual. It's not about individual decision. It's actually socially conditioned or determined decisions. So what kind of social fabric do we have in relation to political participation? Is it a strong one? Do we have strong traditions of families being strongly allied to particular political ideologies, particular political parties, so that they can pursue, they believe in pursuing their political interests or community political interests through particular political parties that actually they believe will deliver those resources that politics is about, the sharing of resources in our society. I wanted to say this. The youth have lost trust, I would say. The youth have lost trust in institutions. They have lost trust in the institutions because it's like we are ambushing them. These are people between 18, imagine a youth who was 17 years old 5 years ago or 4 years ago, now 17 plus. There are people who are between 18 and 22 or 23 who did not participate in the last election. The majority of those who are supposed to register. These people have just finished high school, others are in university, but they need those IDs so that they're able to register. These same people do not have IDs. Most of them don't have IDs. But when they look at institutions, which institutions? We have the civil registration and we also have IBC. Why are the cards delayed? Some of the process is so slow to obtain IDs. There are so many, there's poor planning on the part of civil registration. IBC actually, I'm sure one of the officers could be in this panel. I'm also wondering why IBC has not even tried even to pressure Parliament or even sponsor motion to have these two connected, civil registration and IBC connected, that once you receive an ID card, you automatically receive a voter's card. You can later maybe change, a youth can later change to the polling station where they want to vote, but at least they should have obtained. This is what normally happens in those developed countries. I expect also that we have programs that actually target the youth. If we look, let us assume then that the youth are the problem in either voter turnout or voter registration and all these things. Why then don't we have youth programs that actually, or programs by IBC or civil registration, whatever it is, that target these people called the youth? In other countries, voter turnout is an issue, and therefore there are systems that have been evolved to address these issues. For example, in the United States, they thought that people think they're too busy, they're apathetic, they don't care going to vote. Then they're told, okay, you can vote through mail, you can vote online. Why can't we also obtain documents online? You can register online, and then a voter's card is produced. You can pick it from wherever they would want you to pick it from. It's not a big deal if you put in your information. They can check. Government has systems. We have a Huduma card program, which, of course, I don't want to say much about it, but the technology is there. Why can't we synchronize this registration so that people can get that done? We can change the law. The law can be changed to address these issues and many others. So I wanted to say also this, that the public issue regarding IBC as the main player in this process. We have had recently a number of court decisions which actually challenged, I would say, the authority of IBC, for lack of a better word. And this actually in itself has caused the dwindling of public trust of the IBC. I guess IBC has perhaps done some research to find out how much trust people have in IBC, but I would guess it should be less and less, not more and more. And for that reason, also people look at these elections like, would they be free and fair? The youth might have reasons of such nature that they think that if the elections will be not free and fair, we're not in a hurry. We're not hurrying to go and register to become voters. So I think I've said so much. I will say that IBC and the political elite also. Let me say the political elite, I've talked about IBC. Political elite, our political elite should have actually sensitized the public, not necessarily the youth. The public, they have done it before. I don't know why this time they were not really focused. They should have energized their bases, their constituents, and tell them why it's important to vote. Perhaps in most cases, I know, like in my constituency, the MP is shy. He doesn't meet the public. We have invited him so many times to come and have a meeting in our local place. He has refused because, again, the issues of corruption. He doesn't want to be questioned. Perhaps that's why our MPs have not gone to the grassroots to sensitize the youth and all the constituents about the importance of registering to vote and even coming out to vote when the elections will be in August next year. And many other factors that we could talk about. I will stop there unless there will be a question for me to respond to.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Dr. Richard Bosire, and especially in unpacking fundamental social and political and also institutional questions around electoral processes, and also sharing ideas on how we can improve on voter registration. Thank you so much for that contribution. And we look forward to getting a feedback from our participants who are following, and we can see some questions trickling in the chat box. So back to you, William. William Owino.
Yes, Furaha.
Yes, welcome, William.
Yes. Oh, may I appreciate the panelists that have talked about issues that are affecting young people or youth in terms of registration. And I would also like to echo some of the issue, and maybe speaking after the seniors might be very difficult, but let me just try also to analyze and say my view on the same. If you look at the registration of persons office, let's say in CIR, the IDs are lying there. The used approach of registering young people, all those people who have not registered, to get IDs through the chief barazas. And during the time now they are registering these people at the barazas, they don't go back to the barazas to deliver the ID cards. So these IDs are lying uncollected in their offices. And as you see the panelists talking, or the speakers, they mentioned very clearly that ID is the tool that should be used for one to process or to be registered as a voter. So if it is lying uncollected, who is then now going to register? There is this class war politics that is going around the public. This has made many decisions has been reached, like the deep state things that you hear people mention. Youth are afraid that despite the fact that they are being supposed to register to go and vote, the person whom is going to be voted has already been decided. That is the deep state kind of issue. So they are wondering, why should they register, go vote, and yet the decision has been made? That is also something that is affecting youth people in this constituency. Propaganda by aspirants. We agree, and we need to agree here, that everybody is not supporting the person that somebody might think they're supposed to support. So if you align the registration, vote for somebody and take it for me. Young people are tired of those kind of propaganda and the realignment of politicians towards doing this. As you can see, the playground has been left to the interested persons. That are the politicians. They're the people who are driving the show, making decisions on behalf of the youth and looking at youth with different perspectives. So this has made it very difficult for young people to accept easily to go and register as voter. There is one MC around who said that you just don't go to register. I'll bring somebody who will be giving you money for you to go and register. Let me tell you, the deadline went. These young people never go and register as voters because they were still waiting for the MCA to bring somebody who will pay them. So they are misinforming the young persons towards the registration. As the professor has just mentioned, aligning the ID card to the voter, but not educating young youth on the importance of the document to other perspective is also demystifying or also helping this elephant to stay in this house. I'm saying that young people or youth are demoralized with the development they're seeing around. And they are not associating the history of what the adults are telling them with what they are supposed to do. If you look at the development as infrastructure, the young people are affected more. They are not getting bursary in time. They are not getting road access properly. They are not getting so many things that goes direct to youth in this county that I'm representing. So they don't see the importance of collecting IDs, yet they are supposed to go and vote to change this kind of phenomenon that you are seeing around. So young youth has lost trust to the government due to increased open corruption. If you come to our county, the flagship program that was supposed to be put in place has never been put in place for the last 10 years. So they are seeing that there's no need for them to elect because all monkey are the same, but trees, you can put on trees, but these people are just the same people. You are just recycling these leaders to go and mistreat. And if you look at the court order, this has made many people to fear because even if your leader is now not respecting the rule of law, how will we? And why are you not forcing us? Because we are also the same people in the same country. And then lack of accountability. Accountability is very key. And these small things that we are talking about here are very key to the young people. They are seeing us, we are suffering in this ground. And they are our children. There's no different. You've been voting since you got your ID and whatever, your voter card. But there is no development that these young people are seeing you as a father, as a parent, that the political participation that you've been engaging is changing your lives. So there's no accountability in terms of accountability and also recycling. Look at the communication authority. Look at the people that they are employing. These are the people that are going to manage the political system that is in the country. And they are the people who have been accused of mismanagement of the system in the electoral system. So all this plus what my colleagues have mentioned has put us into an awkward situation where we need to unpack and put good information for these young people to come back on track. Otherwise, even the general election voting might have a challenge. And if this happens, we are going to be electing those people who we don't want to elect by not participating in the voting. The public participation as entrenched in the constitution and all the laws in Kenya are not being adhered to. This one must be followed. And that's the reason I think Angaza is putting a torch into this so that we can move forward and critically look at these issues, put them into perspective to help our young people. Furaha, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that, William. And I think it adds up to the conversations around some of the economic, social, political, some of the issues that are coming up, some of the concerns of the youth, some of the experiences that we are seeing at the grassroots level, touching on the youth and the general population at large. Thank you so much. For me, at this point, I wish to welcome my colleague, Robert Waweru, to take us through the remaining sessions of the program. It has been a pleasure moderating the panel discussions, and I'll of course still be following up on the conversation. So I hereby wish to welcome Robert, who will be moderating the remaining sessions. Robert Waweru, on to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Furaha, and of course, thank you very much everybody who has been tuned in for this very engaging conversation. I'm happy to be here and to take you through this last segment of this great discussion. My name is Robert Waweru. I am here, I work with the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And I would first just want to start with a recap of of what I have gotten from the discussions that has been going on, from the presentations from all the panelists. And I think one thing that we have managed to do is to demystify the whole idea that youth are the problem when it comes to elections. And I think it has been clearly postulated that youth is not really the problem. The problem that we are facing as a country is a problem of the crisis of what I would call a crisis of legitimacy with the institutions that we have. Betty Okero started by very eloquently arguing that what we are witnessing now is actually not just voter apathy, but is political apathy. That not just the youth, but people in Kenya are generally tired, with the system, the way it operates, and people are, disenfranchised. Nerima brought in a very important point when she gave the example of the young people who went to register, and they are told for one reason or the other they cannot be able to get an ID card, or they cannot, and hence they cannot be able to get a voter's card. And what we are seeing from that analogy is a disconnect between the youth, who are the majority of our population, about 75%, and the bureaucratic systems that we have, the very rigid systems that most of the youth then are not able to engage with. When we from the discussions from the discussion by Daktari, my good teacher, we have learned that IEBC, they need to pull up their socks, actually. And it's unfortunate we had invited a representative from IEBC, but they were not able to join because, as you can see, IEBC, there are so many questions that have been directed to IEBC. You know, why can they, you know, as you ask, why can they have a system when you register for an ID, you automatically get an ID card? Or why can't IEBC be innovative in ways in which they can reach the youth? The youth of these days are very, technology is very advanced. We have, the youth are very technologically advanced. They all of them have, you know, mobile phones, and there are all these apps. You know, why can't IEBC be innovative and have something like an app where a youth can register, you know, from wherever they are? They don't have to, you know, travel or go to the station and, you know, and register. So all these are, you know, are barriers that, you know, we have seen as, you know, the reason as to why, you know, the youths have, you know, not registered. But more importantly, and this is a point that Ruth and I think William also, you know, have brought it, have brought out very clearly, is that the youth don't see the benefit of, you know, of voting or of taking part in elections. They cannot be able to connect, you know, voting and improving their lives. In fact, it is the converse. They vote in 2017. They voted. The elections was nullified by the Supreme Court. You know, there was the whole hullabaloo about the elections. In 2013, there was the whole noise of the elections, whether it was free and fair. In 2017, when most of these youths were young, they voted. Then what followed was the post-election violence. So you can see that a lot of what the youth associate with voting is actually negative. There's nothing that there's nothing positive that they can associate with, you know, with elections and voting. And Mumbi also added, you know, the plight of urban youth, especially the youth from the informal settlements. For them, the system, you know, the government is a foreign animal to them. It's just there to, you know, to cause them pain. You can see the number of extrajudicial killings that happens in the informal settlements, the number of demolitions that, you know, take place in the informal settlements where young people are trying to put up stalls by the roadside, you know, try and eke out a living, and you see NMS, they come and demolish their structures. So for them, they don't understand why they need to engage in this process that is hurting them. So I think those are some of the issues that I've been able to get. And if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box, and we are going to put it to our panelists so that they can respond to some of these issues that have been raised. For me, I'd want to start with Nerima. I'd want to maybe put a question to you and ask you what you think, you know, we can do so that probably the youths can be able to feel that the system is more facilitative, so that when they want to apply for, you know, some of these documents and want to register as voters, they are able to do that without, you know, having all these unnecessary requirements that they need to, you know, to do. What do, you know, our institutions need to do? What do IEBC need to do? Or the NRB that is responsible with the processing of people's IDs? I mean, how can they facilitate the 75% of our population that is not in sync with, you know, with what traditionally they believe, you know, you're supposed to be? I think, Nerima, you can take that.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Robert. One, IBC is doing everything. They are managing the election, they are doing sensitization, and then they're also going to be tallying the election. I think that they are doing too much instead of also working with existing institutions to be able to partner and collaborate. At the moment, I know that they are forming a youth coordinating committee. And right now it's a little too late in a sense, too late in the race, but also because they recognize that they are not reaching young people in terms of even communicating, sharing information, or even where they are. I mean, they have been going to the different counties, but a lot of times they're going to the towns. It's very difficult for some people to reach some of these venues, and they're not widespread throughout the country. So that has been a challenge for them. Also, in the aspect of the misinformation, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that in terms of what do the youth need to do to be able to get their voters' cards. I already shared the issue of the ID for one. Another issue that also popped up is, yes, someone has voted once before, but they want to transfer. There have been varying stories. Some people have needed to get letters, some from chiefs, some of them have to they've lived somewhere for 6 months. Others, it's been so easy. They just go to a particular politician who now does it for them because they want those votes. There's also instances of people just going to a particular office and being shunned. This happened in Embakasi, where we had a youth who say they've moved, they want to change their vote, and they've been told, no, today we're just doing registration. Hiyo kitu ya kubadilisha mavote si leo. So there's also that, where IBC is just focusing on registration, and they've been told in some offices when it comes to transfer, there are particular offices that will take care of it. And there have been youth who have been chased to Huduma centers. And again, Huduma centers are not everywhere. So we're seeing a bit of a disconnect when it comes to the coordination of IBC. Frankly, I'm not surprised that they are not on this call today. They were not in a meeting yesterday. I'm sure that they are overwhelmed with so many things that are happening. Even right now, accreditation is continuous. So entities that want to support and help IBC in terms of sharing this information need to be accredited, and they're also struggling with the uptake of that and being able to process this permission to do that. So it was interesting for me to hear Honorable Martha Karua yesterday, and she made some very interesting points in terms of, even when we think of elections and the fact that youth are saying ni deep state, it doesn't really matter whether you vote or not. They are going to need a lot of support in terms of building that trust. And the only way to build that trust is to have transparency. And the only way to have transparency is to be able to work with people on the ground and using mechanisms, even using technology, ideas of as soon as a tallying is done, having someone using a smartphone and sharing pictures on platforms after the officer has already declared the results in a particular constituency, rather than papers being transported and then we're not sure what happens in between, and then a different winner is announced. So these are the ways that you're going to build trust in young people, where processes are visible to the youth. I think that even when we look at now, not even the aspect of IBC, how the commissioners were selected, the fact that that process was so open to the public, people were able to see, and anyway, that person cannot be a commissioner, because even the way they did that interview, I would not even hire them in my own company. So because of that process, people are able to know the commissioners who are on board. Why can't they have that similar process on the ground in terms of results? Because we cannot fully rely on the media to be present, because the media has their own challenges. They are also not everywhere all the time, but youth have access to phones. And it's also these same youth are also involved in that counting process. They're also officers. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that I see is the different players who are involved in this process from political parties. Political parties need to be held accountable. If you're going to be a member of a political party, right now there's the whole issue of people finding out that they are members and they're surprised. And now they are trying to launch an application tomorrow where it's supposed to allow you to be able to have access to that information. And if you're not a member of a party, you can deregister. If you want to be a member of another party, you can simply apply online through the access of your phone, of a computer. So ORPP is working on that. So even political parties need to be held accountable in terms of, if you're going to have members join your party because you want them to be involved in primaries, or you want them to participate in those processes, then you also have to sensitize them on the importance of participation. You cannot just leave that to IBC or CSOs and CBOs and NGOs. Also, political parties need to sensitize their members as much as they engage. These are the rules of the engagement. This is why you should engage, and not just buying voters and having them involved in these processes last minute, and then having shambolic party primaries. And then we're all shocked because of the candidates that are left at the ballot, which a lot of times are people that we do not want. And then youth feel that they have been forced to have these candidates. Another issue that I feel we haven't quite tackled today is the rise of the digital space. The fact that a lot of this information is being shared online. Youth are getting information from Facebook, even those who don't have access, they're in rural areas. They have that one member in their youth base who has access to a smartphone, who now has this information. Now wanakakwa base, and they're the ones who have all the knowledge, but they're getting this information. Maybe it's propaganda, misinformation, disinformation. They're not getting this information from mainstream media. They're following bloggers, they're following politicians, and they're basically rumor mongering. And that's a dangerous place to be, because you have young people believing something as fact that is not factual. And again, we don't even have committees that decipher this false information. So the IBC is going to be more concerned about what information is out there that is false, that is not helping us, that we need to negate. So they are working in a space where they're using very old mechanisms to engage a population that is using very new mechanisms to engage. And that's how they're going to have to link the two and be able to have a sort of interlink kind of relationship of mixing the two, where you're going to have to reach youth in rural areas and reach youth in urban areas and still be able to communicate and understand them and coordinate. Those are some of the things that come to the top of my head in response to your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Nerima, for that very insightful response. In the question box, I see Ramadan Kanu asking why IEBC only have registration stations in urban areas or in towns, especially in the northern region of the country, where it's vast, and the people who live there are mainly pastoralists, so they move around, and so they're not able to register. And the question that I'd want to put this to Betty, and I want to tie this to a question that you had raised earlier, is with regard to financing, IBC financing. I mean, I know IBC receive a lot of flack and they receive a lot of questions, but one of their defense is that they don't get the money they ask for. For example, with the voter registration, they had asked for 4 billion and they got, I think, 1.2 billion. So then they might argue they are not able to to have that wide reach that people would expect. So in as much as Betty, in as much as IBC is criticized for not doing enough to reach everybody, like Kanu is saying, in the northern part of country where most people are pastoralists and they move from one area to another. When you have just a point where people are going to register, that means they're going to be left out. How do IBC go ahead in working with the little resources that they have, but again making sure that they are able to reach everybody?
Okay, so for me, the first thing is that we have to get IBC from thinking that election is an event. It isn't. And that's why they're in office the whole year. They've got a whole term. Elections are a process. It's a process that requires different concentration at different time. It has to be context relevant. We can't just say that we are going to do things the same way right across the country, because we are not the same right across the country. And I think that is why that question is being asked. Why is it, if you're going to ask for this money, Why are you asking for money just to have a convenient place where you're going to be able to do the voter registration? And I think it is important for IEBC to also start looking at how they start viewing their mandates in the country. So it's not just about a by-election, and it's not just about the general election. There are so many other things. It's the voter education, the voter registration, the clearing, the sanitizing of the books. All those processes can take place every month if possible. It's about engaging with the Ministry of Immigration. Why is it? Who have you registered? Can we find out who they are? How do we link them up with the offices? Those are things that they can do without resources, so that even at the end, when they're starting to talk about the mass voter registration, the bulk of the people already have been registered across the whole year. And that's how we need to be able to look at this. So it also makes me wonder whether IEBC have just decided that their mandate is confined to only a general election and a by-election, and all those other processes that are so important that give their office the credibility, the legitimacy, is completely ignored until just this 6 months or couple of months before the election. And then all of a sudden they're so alert and they're so alive. And then the rest of the 4 years, we get to not see them at all. I think that needs to change. The second thing for me is until young people recognize that elections are also not just about statistics, but also about so much more than just that the culmination of their life choices are on the day when they put their paper in the ballot box. We need to be able to get that conversation going. Young people have got the capacity, they have got the power, they have just completely underutilized their power. They need to be able to sort out the differences that weaken them, the ethnicity that, the barriers that they create, the regionalism, the whole class. If young people just got together, if we say you're 60%, really? If you're 60%, this country can do exactly what it is that you want them to do. If you're 60% of the population, and that out of that 60%, we're talking about 50% that are registered voters, they have the capacity and the power to transform this country into what they would like it to be. And we just have got to be able to get into the conversation of how young people recognize that elections are not about politicians, but elections are about them, that it is about the changes that they would like. And so when people come in and say, I am going to do for you, they're like, this is what we are putting somebody to go and do. And if the person doesn't do that, we don't have to wait for 5 years, because the Constitution gives us the power to be able to remove people if they're not doing that. But the Constitution also is very clear about the requirements of the people who should be able to lead. We know those people. They live within our backyard, so to speak. They are our neighbors. They are our community members. So if there's anybody who gets to vet, it really should be the people who are voting, because the people come from their locality and they know what it is that they're doing. But in terms of how we have to engage with IEBC, I think we need to be able to give IEBC red cards right from year 1 to year 5, which culminates in a general election. Civil society should not wait until the last couple of months before a general election to start questioning, their performance, or to start questioning the level of their preparedness. If we're told that MCAs do not want people to register because they want to ensure that they retain their power, why can't the same be applied with Parliament who do not want to release money? Because the more people that we register and the more people we get to vote, the more tenuous also their positions will be. I think it's all about political interests. And if we know that political interest is involved, then we've got to be able to start this process a lot earlier, so we get young people to continuously register to vote. And that when it comes to the mass voter registration, it's just the addition. It's a bonus, but that we consistently are voting people. So even for us, we can't make civic education also an event that only happens because there's a general election. We have got to do both civic education and political education in a way that our community members will be consistently informed about why. Because when we link it very closely to the election, it is also problematic in terms of how the messaging is done, not just by civil society, but also with the politicians who sometimes seem to have more gravitas with the young people than civil society does. So when the pressure is off, we stand a better chance of having this engagement that is more fulfilling, that is open, that is also transformational, because there's no pressure. The pressure at that time is know your rights, and this is what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty. For your very insightful question. Dr. Bosira, I don't know whether he's in. There is a very burning question that is coming through, and it's something that I've also been wondering. I've seen a politician who is a close relative of one of the leading presidential candidates arguing that they have been losing elections, or rather his brother has been losing elections in the past because he did not have the system on his side. And he has been arguing that going into 2022, it's a sure bet that he's going to win the election because they have the votes and they have the system. So, I mean, what is this thing called the system? And could it be the reason why most youths are actually disillusioned? And this is a question that is coming from Peter. How can we demystify this notion of the system or the deep state that could be making young people believe that their votes don't make a difference? And the question that I would want to ask is, does this deep state or the system actually exist, and does it influence elections? Because as we can see, it's having an impact in making people lack belief in IBC's capacity to conduct free and fair elections. I'd want to pose this to maybe Mr. William and Mombi. When you interact with people, are they convinced that their votes are not going to count because there's a system that is going to determine who is going to be the winner, and hence they don't need to participate because the process is already predetermined? Is that the case when you listen to people?
Yes, Robert, I want to say that that is the situation, because even a few weeks ago, there was a list in Siaya that some politician has already given themselves. They got the direct ticket from the ODM party to be the leaders in the Senate, in constituencies, and the rest. This has brought a lot of heat in the ground, that people are not willing, and even young people are not willing to go to take vote because already it has been determined. So the issue of deep state has been talked about even in the TVs. There have been discussion about the system and the deep state, the discussions in the TV, and they're saying that it is a real thing. So people are fearing that their vote may not count in terms of participation in election because of this kind of discussion. They are being championed even in the TVs, in the radios, the discussion of deep state and the discussion about the system being on our side, system being on the other people's side. That has raised a lot of heat, and people are not willing. And even today in the morning, I passed somewhere and then asked the same question. They told me that the issue of their lineup for the ticket has been given to other people. They cannot go and participate in that kind of election. Let them take what they want. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much, William, for confirming that and indicating that it's true. The notion of system in quotes is contributing to the voter apathy that we are seeing. I can see we have about 10 minutes to go. This discussion was supposed to end at about one. I want to open the floor to 3 questions from three participants. You can just raise your hand. I can see there's Faith who has already raised her hand. You have you can only ask one question. You can direct it to any of the panelists. I want to start with Boaz. Please be brief. Ask your question, and then we'll go to Faith, and then we'll take other 2 questions, and then we will conclude. Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed listening to the panelists. In fact, initially you saw in the chat box I'd indicated that I wished also to give some contribution, but because of time, I'll not go into that. But one thing that I would have wished then for us to emphasize, because it's an element that is missing. What is a vote? And why register to vote? I think because I'm just listening a lot more of telling people register to vote, register to vote. I'm not hearing people being told that register so that you can be voted for. I think that link really need to be there. And I don't know what Professor Busire, my good friend Dr. Busire, I don't know what you'd have to say about that, because you need to unpack that vote. Is it something which is making the citizen really not to get it? And connected to that, I think chapter 7 of our constitution, chapter 7 has been very silent. And I liked when Betty, you're the one who emphasized the electoral infrastructure, the role of the IBC and all that. That chapter 7, why are we making it as prominent? Connected to that also is Article 10 of our Constitution, because it appears then when citizens are telling you that they just want to sit back, that it's predetermined outcomes, are we really attuned to Article 10? And can that also be part of what we would be expecting even IBC to be involved in promoting so that then citizens can participate? Because all those elements of national values and principles of governance, things which would make people have trust and faith, and they realize that whatever action they take or no action taken has got implications in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Boaz, for your comments and also your question to Dr. Bosire. Maybe Dr. Bosire, you can respond to that comment from Boaz, and when you are responding to that question, I also want to put to you also a question that had come from Immaculate Omolo, who was saying that Kenyans view voting from a transactional point of view, and it is true. Last week I was at at a forum where we were trying to sensitize members of the community to register, and we had the people from the provincial administration, the chiefs and the assistant chiefs, and one of the things that they were telling people is that you have to register so that you can get bursaries. If you don't register, you will not get bursaries. So how do we instill this culture of participation without wanting to expect something from especially material things, financial things from how can we make people understand that they have a right and they have a duty to exercise voting, which is a civic responsibility. Dr. Bosire.
Yes, yes, my good student. I got the question. Let me start with the Ms. Omolos when she talked about transactional, kind of a transactional voter sensitization and call for voter registration. I think because IBC has failed, and I don't know, as Nerima was speaking, whether we should excuse IBC because perhaps it has a plate full of things. They cannot be able to do all those things stipulated in the Constitution and the law. But I want to say that in the absence of the right information, these other people, politicians, some administrators are trying different things. so that they can get people to go and register. When they say register to get a bursary, it's not right, it's wrong, it's the wrong thing. Registration should be, if the IBC was sensitizing our people or the Kenyans, they should tell them why it's important to participate in an electoral process. It doesn't have to be what you immediately gain. Participation by itself is an act of patriotism. You are a patriot, so you are going to vote because it is your civic duty to vote, not for anything in return to you as an individual, but for the reason that we'll have good governance, would have the good leadership that will deliver those public goods that we're all looking towards. Because a government is actually about authoritative allocation of resources or values in our society. There is that national cake. How do we have our roads, our jobs, the jobs, creation of employment opportunities, adding value to agricultural produce, doing the infrastructure, building schools and improving universities and providing opportunities for self-development. Those are the issues. So it is our civic duty, it's the right of the citizen to participate in an electoral process. So it's wrong. It's wrong. It is completely out of the world. And politicians have now started using that approach by saying, you know, I'll give you 1,000 shillings if you registered and voted. We have had elsewhere where the youth and others are registering to vote, and they give the voting card to the politician to keep, that they will get it back when they'll be voting, and they shall have voted for him or for her. I think it's the wrong thing. We need to educate, give our youth and the entire citizenry the knowledge that elections are not about those transient things that we talk about. It's about posterity. We destroy our country today, will take many years, many decades to repair this country. So we must have good leadership in place. The issue of Boas, my friend, is talking about participation as voters. And, you know, it's like the youth should register to vote. But again, it's important also to note that to vie or to vote, you must have a voter's card. To vie or to vote, you must have a voter's card. They should be told the truth. The youth cannot vie in an election if themselves are not registered voters. I might be wrong, but the law and the lawyers perhaps in the room, they know that very clearly, that then you must be a registered voter. You must be a member of a political party, or if not, an independent and all that. And the vote is the weapon. How do you run for an election if you cannot vote for yourself? Then it will be a joke. So they should be told clearly for you, and that is part of public education. Let me just end it there. It's part of public education. We have not done political education, voter education to our people sufficiently to be able even to interpret when what the politicians say when they say, you get a voter's card to vote for me. That's not the case. You can get a voter's card and stand against it. So they should be able, we should be able to do well. We should do well in voter education, in political education in our country, so that we can have an educated citizen who know that they have that political efficacy. They believe in themselves that they can make a difference. Their vote will change the country. And that would actually drive us to get those voters' cards and drive us to turn out in large numbers to vote, because we are going to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daktari. I think one of the things that I'm getting from you is this is a societal problem. It's not just an issue of IBC or civil society or government. I think it's a problem that we have as a society, and we need to change the way we interact with those processes. Finally, I want to ask Faith to ask your question, and then after Faith, I'll invite Annette Nerima to sort of wrap this whole discussion and close the webinar for us. Faith. I think Faith has been raising her hand for a long time, and I think she's not in. So at this point, it's already 1. This discussion we were supposed to have concluded this webinar at 1.
Hello.
Okay, Faith, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Faith. I work in a flower farm and in Naivasha.
Okay.
Actually, the question I wanted to ask has been reacted upon by Robert.
Okay.
Because what is actually disturbing the youth is why should we vote? Why should we vote? That is the question that remains unanswered, but Robert has actually tried to elaborate on it because we really need that the political education at the ground. You know, you cannot just wake up in the morning and ask the youth to go register for votes. I mean, they are asking you, why should we vote? Our mothers and our fathers go out in the morning. What they come back in the evening with is ink on their fingers, and they cry for the next 10 years. You see, now I think Robert has really done a good job because he has actually tackled on it. And I think that is what is supposed to be done. We should go back to the ground. IBC and the nation should go back to the ground and educate the young people on why they should vote. Not because of the handouts, not because of kangumu and soda, not because of anything, not because of bursary, but for good governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faith, for your comments. So at this point, I think I would want to welcome Annette Nerima to just, conclude the discussion and then close the webinar for us. So Annette.
Thank you so much, Robert and team. As I conclude, and I think I've been listening to our panelists and the discussants and even the participants on this discussion on the voter registration puzzle. And one of the things that comes out strongly is that the issues around voter registration is not only about voter apathy, but it's a mix of so many issues. And to just mention what comes out strongly in this discussion is the issue of monetized elections, where we are seeing that at this particular time where the IBC is conducting voter registrations for the upcoming general election in 2022, we see transactional voter registration where politicians are trying to woo the public to actually pay them to be able to vote. To be able to register as voters. The other thing is legitimacy of the outcome of the elections. And this is where we hear about the deep state, people asking questions, the youths in particular, asking themselves, what is the need for us? Believing that the system has already been rigged against their interests. So that is coming out also strongly in this discussion. We've also heard about the court decisions where the court has questioned some of the IBC decisions, and that way, what we see or what I hear here is that there's now lack of trust from the public. The other issue that is also coming out strongly as a challenge is on the recycling of leaders, where we see that they're just the same leaders that we're having year in, year out when it comes to matters elections. Also in terms of appointments, we now see persons with integrity questions coming back to some of the electoral management, to run some of the electoral management bodies. So that is coming out strongly, and I'm happy because I've also heard about some of the recommendations from our panelists, which for me, in terms of the challenge of voter registration and election in general, we are seeing disillusioned public and also apathy towards politics by the youth because of the challenges that I've just mentioned. And what are some of the recommendations that we are having is that the solution to this is not anything else other than political education to the general public, that's the youth, and also the youth to understand what exactly is in need for them, why they need maybe to engage in matters election moving forward. The other, what else comes out as a recommendation is on activism that is centered towards demanding transparency, accountability, and even meaningful public participation in elections
including voter registration that the country is, or IBC is conducting at this point in time. The other recommendation that we hear or comes out strongly is on flexibility. And when we talk about flexibility, it's about the synchronizing of technology to also be able to allow youth and even the public in general to vote through online as was witnessed in the United States. And also when you talk about flexibility, it's about maybe youth who would want to change their voting stations that be allowed in easily, other than the bureaucracy or the tedious process that we have right now in the country that does not allow youth who would want to transfer to other registration, to other voting stations to do so with ease. And as a recommendation, we also see the a recommendation towards introduction of programs that target the youth to be able to resolve whatever the situation or the issue is that they are facing, to allow them moving forward, engage in elections and even electoral processes. And in terms of the IBC, is our recommendation, or the recommendation I hear here is a proposal that IBC partners with other stakeholders interested in matters elections, such as the media and also the civil society organizations, rather than them working in silos. And lastly, but this is also one strong one in terms of a proposal, is on transforming political leadership of this country, because again, year in, year out, or rather in all those elections that we've seen or have happened in this country, we have seen same leaders, and now people are asking themselves questions, even the youth asking themselves questions, why do we need to vote these same people? Because they've been in power and we've not seen any change. Why do we need them? So as a proposal, there is need to transform political leadership of this country. With that, I'll just do a vote of thanks. And I take this opportunity to thank Nerima Wako, who was one of our panelists, for the insightful discussion on voter registration puzzle. And I think, Nerima, you mentioned one thing about the rise of digital space, and that is one of the things, or one of the areas that we also need to look at moving forward. We also offer our sincere thanks to Betty Okero as well for the insightful discussion on political apathy. So thank you so much, Betty, and even for creating time to be part of this great discussion. We also, as KHRC, on behalf of Angaza, express our gratefulness to Dr. Richard Bosire. You've really weighed in on this discussion and given us perspectives, including very, very good recommendations on for both civil society and the IEBC and other important bodies that work on matters election moving forward. We remain grateful to William Owino as well, who has also shared with us some of the perspectives from the grassroots. And I also want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Ruth Mumbi as well for sharing with us perspectives from the grassroots. And I also want to acknowledge the KHRC organizing team that is comprised of Davis Malombe, Mary Campbell, Annette Nerima, Furaha for moderating, Robert as well for moderating this. We have Bernard, who is behind the tech person behind this discussion, and Soila as well. So thank you so much. And I think because I don't have any other business, I would want to close the meeting. Asanteni sana.